Hi everyone. Today we're going to go through an introduction to the Perpetual inventory system, which is basically what it sounds like. It's an inventory system that focuses on being absolutely continuous and up to date. The first thing that we'll focus on is what is actually involved in a Perpetual inventory system, and then we'll go on to the main mechanism that we use to keep track of things, which is our inventory cards. I apologize if from time to time I slip up and call them stock cards. It's a little bit more straightforward, but it's old language and we try to avoid that. So, inventory cards, always. Okay, so let's pop to the slideshow. As I said, today we're looking at the Perpetual inventory system. Now, you might be thinking, what is Perpetual inventory? So, Perpetual inventory is the system that we use that continuously monitors the inflows and outflows of our inventory. So this includes every single bit of movement that comes from our general ledger. This could be sales, it could be purchases, it could be returns and things like that we'll be looking at later in the term. So inventory cards are what we use to record each of these movements. So I'll show you an example of those soon. The balance of these inventory cards should always match the balance of the inventory account. If they don't, then clearly we've made an error at some point, which again is a good thing because it helps us to double check everything that we do. Now, when we're looking at inventory systems, there's only two valuation methods that we need to consider. The first is identified cost, where the actual cost of each individual item that we sell is recorded. And we also have FIFO, and FIFO, which stands for first in, first out. This assumes that the first goods that we purchase are always going to be the ones that we sell first. Now, both are acceptable, but there's different times that each should be used. So, FIFO method requires that purchases of inventory be kept in the order that they're purchased. For example, if we buy 10 units at $5 and then a few days later we buy 10 units at $6, then what we do is we assume that those $5 units are sold first because they were purchased first. First in, first out. This means that when 2 units are sold, we assume that it's going to be the stock that cost us $5. Only once we've sold all of those $5 bits of stock do we move on to the $6 bits. Now, FIFO is an assumption. It doesn't mean that we actually attempt to sell that stock first. There's going to be times where it's absolutely impossible to tell which stock is sold first. And this is at a time where we need to consider what method we're using. So, identified cost records the actual cost of each piece of inventory, which seems more accurate and more relevant. So why wouldn't we use it? Now, as I said, there are times where it's just impossible to use that. So if it's physically impossible to count the units, then we use FIFO. For example, let's look at a petrol station. When a petrol station buys fuel, it's all going into the one tank. So if you purchase 20,000 litres at $1, and then you later on purchase 10,000 litres at $1.20, there is no way on earth to tell which bit of fuel is coming out of the pump. So we just assume that we're using up the 20,000 litres of fuel that we purchase first before we move on to the 10,000 litres of $1.20. Okay? So it's for that reason quite often that we use FIFO. The other time that we do it is when it's just going to be too much work. Identified cost quite often relies on the idea that each bit of inventory is labeled or has a code or something like that. Sometimes that's not going to be possible. You aren't going to individually label each banana that comes into your grocery store. You're not going to label each box of Cocoa Pops, things like that. So you just have to assume that what you sell first is, or sorry, what you purchase first is what you sell first. Okay. So an inventory card is what we use to record all these different movements. And we're going to go through some examples here. So before we start using an inventory card, we need to consider whether or not we are going to be using identified cost or FIFO, because this will actually change the value of our cost of sales, which we'll see in a moment. And because this is a perpetual system, it needs to be updated daily. Nowadays, when we're looking at computer-operated systems, this is very easy. Every transaction, every time something's scanned or anything like that, it goes directly into the inventory system and we don't have to worry about it. But there are still some small businesses that use paper cards or systems where you need to double check the inventory card in the system. So, let's consider the following few transactions and let's see the impact of FIFO versus identified cost. So, we're going to start with an opening balance of 5 units, which cost us $10. We're then going to purchase 10 more units at $12 each, and we've got a source document there, which is invoice 45. And then the next day, we sell 8 units for cash, and we've identified that 3 had a cost of $10 and 5 had a cost of $12. So we have our identified cost, but we can also follow FIFO because we have these dates of when we held each bit of stock. So let's have a look at the difference. First off, we have identified cost. Now you can see here, we've got our balance. So you've got the balance on May 1st, quantity, value of each piece, total. That's the layout of every single bit of your inventory card. You can see when we've got stock coming in, we've got May 2nd, invoice 45, and we've got the amount coming in. Okay? 10 units at $12 each for $120 total. And that means that we can actually put in our balance column because we've got in column, out column, balance column. And here we've got our original balance plus the 10 units that we purchased for $12 equaling that. So by doing this, we're keeping track of exactly what stock we have and what cost we're purchasing it at. Then, as I said, identified cost method. We have on May 3rd, receipt 98, we are losing 3 pieces of stock, inventory. Old habits die hard. 3 pieces of inventory. I've lost my mouse. Yeah, 3 pieces of inventory, $10 each, which cost us $30. And we're also losing 5 pieces of inventory, valued at $12 each, which cost us in total $60. So we can tell through identified cost exactly how many units of our $10 inventory and our $12 inventory we're losing. And we can add up to see exactly how much this sale has cost us. We can see that it's cost us $90 in inventory. So you can see we've got our credit purchase, we've got our actual cost of sales because we're using identified cost. But here, let's use FIFO. So the top of it doesn't change. We've still got that inflow of stock and we still order it like this because this is the older stock. But here, instead of 3 units at $10 and 5 units at $12, we assume that we're selling the old stock first. So these 5 units that we had, we assume we sell those first and then we sell 3 units at $12. So in total, instead of having $90 of cost of sales, we have $86. So cost of sales is actually reduced under FIFO. And you can see our balance has changed as well. So instead of our assets being worth $80 here, Here they're worth 84, so you can see where that missing value's gone. Now, for a small business or a small piece of inventory, this might not make a huge difference, but there are some things where this can end up making very, very large differences in the realm of hundreds of thousands of dollars for a certain business. So it's important to think about the financial ramifications that selecting this method will have. Okay? So as I said, no difference to identify cost, but there is a difference to the cost of sales. Now, in terms of wrapping this chapter up, this is a very short chapter, so I'm hoping that we can get onto chapter 8 very soon, start getting into some more in-depth stuff. So let's wrap this up.
A few moments later.
So in chapter 7, we're just kind of getting used to using our inventory cards to record movements of inventory in and out. We'll have a look at identified cost versus FIFO, but mostly it's just starting to get comfortable with things before we move into some harder things such as returns and changes of valuation of inventory and stuff like that in chapter 8. So let's fly through chapter 7 and get on to chapter 8 as soon as we can. I'll leave you guys with the wrap up and a random meme that I have chosen because no one sent one today. So super disappointing. But good luck and let me know if you need any help. Thanks. Bye.